Marcus Chen stared at the rusty keys in his palm, feeling the weight of his strange inheritance. The lawyer had been apologetic but firm. His great-uncle Ezra had left him a dusty antique store in downtown Portland, along with debts that made his stomach turn. What made it stranger was that Marcus had never heard of Uncle Ezra until 3 weeks ago. The storefront looked forgotten by time itself. Faded paint peeled from the wooden sign that read Ezra's Curiosities. Newspapers from last winter still clung to the windows like desperate ghosts. Marcus pushed the heavy door open, wincing at the bell's harsh clang that announced his arrival to absolutely nobody. Inside, the store felt larger than it should have been. Shelves stretched toward a ceiling lost in shadows, packed with the kind of junk that made people wonder why anyone kept it. Broken clocks with no hands, ceramic cats missing ears, books in languages he couldn't identify. The air tasted of old wood and something metallic that made his teeth ache. Marcus picked up a snow globe containing what looked like a miniature city with too many towers. The liquid inside swirled purple instead of white, and for just a moment he could swear he saw tiny lights moving between the buildings. He set it down quickly, telling himself it was just dust in his eyes. 3 hours of inventory later, Marcus had filled 2 notebooks with items that defied easy categorization. A compass that pointed in 17 different directions. A music box that played melodies he'd never heard but somehow knew by heart. A mirror that reflected everything except his own face, showing instead an empty room with the same furniture arranged differently. The back of the store held a narrow hallway lined with more shelves. At the end, Marcus found a heavy wooden door with 7 different locks, each requiring a different key. 5 of the keys hung on a hook beside the door. 2 were missing. Marcus tried the 5 keys he had, working through various combinations. Nothing happened until he inserted the 3rd key and turned it counterclockwise instead of clockwise. A soft click echoed through the hallway, followed by a sound like distant wind chimes. Behind the door lay a room that shouldn't have existed. It was larger than the entire store, with walls that seemed to breathe and shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. The floor was made of something that looked like obsidian, but felt warm under his feet. In the center sat a single desk made from a material that reminded him of mother of pearl, if mother of pearl could glow with its own inner light. On the desk sat a device that hurt to look at directly. It had too many angles, as if someone had tried to build a cube in 4 dimensions and only partially succeeded. Next to it lay a handwritten note in Uncle Ezra's spidery writing. For Marcus, the only family member stubborn enough to see what others can't. The store was never about selling antiques. It was about keeping the wrong things from falling into the wrong hands. You'll understand soon enough. Trust the room. It knows what it's doing. Marcus reached toward the impossible device, then stopped. The rational part of his mind screamed warnings, but something deeper urged him forward. This was why Uncle Ezra had left him the store. This was why he'd never heard of his great-uncle until now. Some secrets were too dangerous for family reunions. The device hummed when his fingers made contact, sending vibrations up his arm and into his chest. The room around him began to change. Walls flowing like water, ceilings stretching upward into infinity. New shelves materialized, filled with objects that definitely weren't from Earth. A sphere that contained what looked like a miniature storm system. Books that wrote themselves as he watched. A small tree growing in a pot, its leaves shifting through colors that had no names. Marcus stumbled backward, breaking contact with the device. The room snapped back to its original size, leaving him gasping and disoriented. But he understood now with a clarity that terrified him. Uncle Ezra hadn't been an antique dealer. He'd been a guardian, a keeper of things that the universe had misplaced or hidden for good reason. Outside, evening was falling over Portland, and Marcus could see people walking past the store windows, completely unaware that their world had just become infinitely more complicated. He locked the door behind him, all 7 locks clicking into place with sounds like distant thunder. As he walked home through familiar streets that now felt alien, Marcus realized his life had just divided into before and after. Before the room, before the impossible device, before he learned that his family tree had roots extending into places where humans weren't supposed to grow. In his pocket, the keys felt heavier than they should have, as if they were made from collapsed stars rather than ordinary metal. Tomorrow he would return to the store. Tomorrow, he would figure out what Uncle Ezra had really been protecting, and why that responsibility had fallen to him. Tonight, He would try to sleep and pretend that the snow globe in his apartment window wasn't showing him a city that existed somewhere beyond the reach of human telescopes, where purple snow fell upward and the lights in the towers spelled out messages in languages that predated human civilization by millions of years. Marcus returned to the store the next morning with coffee and determination, both of which evaporated the moment he saw the woman waiting by his door. She stood perfectly still, wearing a business suit that looked expensive and somehow wrong, as if it had been designed by someone who understood human fashion but had never actually seen a human wear clothes. Her smile revealed teeth too white and too perfectly aligned. When she spoke, her voice carried an accent that seemed to shift between British, German, and something else entirely. "Mr. Chen, I presume? I represent certain interested parties who would like to discuss a business proposition regarding your recently acquired establishment." Marcus fumbled with the keys, acutely aware that this woman hadn't blinked once since he'd arrived. "Store's not open yet. Come back later. I'm afraid this matter cannot wait." She placed her hand on the door, and Marcus heard the locks clicking open from the inside, all 7 of them, in perfect sequence. "We really must talk." Inside the store, the woman moved with unsettling grace, examining items without actually touching them. She paused at the snow globe Marcus had handled yesterday, tilting her head like a bird studying prey. "Interesting. This particular artifact has been missing from our records for some time. Your uncle was quite resourceful in his acquisitions." "Who exactly are you?" Marcus asked, positioning himself between her and the hallway that led to the hidden room. "I represent the Consortium of Universal Antiquities. We are, shall we say, collectors of unique items. Your uncle understood our mutual interests." Her smile widened, and Marcus caught a glimpse of something metallic beneath her tongue. "We're prepared to offer you substantial compensation for certain pieces in his collection." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Portland weather. "What kind of pieces?" "Items that don't belong in human hands. Artifacts that could cause significant difficulties if mishandled." She gestured toward the compass with 17 directions. "This navigation device, for instance, could allow someone to travel to places that would break their mind. The snow globe contains an actual pocket dimension. That music box plays temporal frequencies that could unravel local causality." The casual way she described reality-breaking objects made Marcus's hands shake. "You're not human, are you? Human is such a limiting concept, don't you think?" She moved closer, and Marcus noticed her shadow fell in the wrong direction. "My species has been monitoring Earth for quite some time. Your uncle served as an unofficial liaison, keeping certain dangerous items out of circulation. We assumed his successor would be equally reasonable." Marcus backed toward the counter, his mind racing. "What happens if I'm not reasonable?" "That would be unfortunate. For everyone." Her form seemed to flicker like a television with poor reception. "The items in this store represent technologies and forces that could destabilize your entire planetary system. Humans have a tendency toward curiosity that exceeds their capacity for survival. But Uncle Ezra was human, and he handled these things. Your uncle was exceptional. He possessed certain mental qualities that allowed him to interact with non-terrestrial artifacts without losing his sanity. We had hoped these traits were hereditary." She studied Marcus with eyes that reflected too much light. "Yesterday you activated the sorting chamber. Most humans who touch the control matrix experience immediate neural feedback that leaves them catatonic. Yet here you stand, reasonably coherent." Marcus thought about the device in the hidden room, how it had felt both alien and familiar when he touched it. "What is that thing exactly?" "A multi-dimensional storage and classification system. It automatically sorts objects based on their level of danger to local reality. Items that pose immediate threats are quarantined in pocket dimensions. Less dangerous artifacts are cataloged for study or eventual disposal." Her voice took on an almost fond tone. "Your species created it, actually. About 3 million years ago." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "That's impossible. Humans didn't exist 3 million years ago. Homo sapiens didn't exist. But humanity, as a concept, as a pattern of consciousness that emerges from certain neural configurations, is much older than your species realizes. You're not the first iteration of human intelligence on this planet." She moved to examine a tarnished silver bracelet. "The previous version developed faster than you have. They reached the stars, explored other dimensions, built technologies that could reshape reality itself. They also developed better sense than to actually use most of what they created. Marcus felt the floor shifting beneath his understanding of everything. What happened to them? They transcended, left physical existence behind, and became something your language lacks words to describe. But before departing, they established safeguards. Storage facilities like this one, scattered across the galaxy, maintaining collections of technologies too dangerous for younger species to discover. She turned back to Marcus with that predatory smile. They also left behind genetic markers in the local population, ensuring that suitable guardians would eventually emerge. You're saying I'm descended from ancient superhumans? In a manner of speaking, the capacity exists within your neural structure, dormant until activated by exposure to the appropriate stimuli. Your uncle discovered this by accident when he inherited the store from his predecessor. You're discovering it now. She paused, head tilted as if listening to something only she could hear. The question is what you intend to do with this knowledge. Marcus looked around the store with new eyes, seeing not junk but a carefully curated collection of universe-threatening artifacts. The weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders like a lead blanket. What did Uncle Ezra do? He maintained the collection, identified and acquired new dangerous items, prevented catastrophic accidents, and occasionally assisted our organization with particularly problematic situations. Her form solidified, becoming more human in appearance. In return, we ensured his safety and provided certain technological advantages that extended his lifespan considerably. How long was he the Guardian? Approximately 160 years. Marcus nearly dropped his coffee. He was over 160 years old. The role comes with benefits. Enhanced longevity, improved resistance to disease, accelerated healing, and eventually, the ability to perceive and interact with higher dimensions. She gestured toward the hidden room. The sorting chamber will gradually enhance your capabilities as you work with it. Your uncle could see probability streams, communicate telepathically with non-terrestrial intelligence, and manipulate matter at the molecular level. The offer hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Power beyond human imagination, in exchange for becoming a cosmic janitor, cleaning up dangerous toys left behind by his own species' impossible ancestors. Marcus thought about his ordinary life, his dead-end job, his empty apartment, and realized he'd already made his choice the moment he walked into this store. What's the first step? The woman who called herself Agent Vex led Marcus to the hidden room, producing 2 additional keys from thin air. The remaining locks opened with sounds like singing metal, and Marcus found himself standing before the impossible device once again. This time the room had reorganized itself into something resembling a laboratory crossed with a cathedral. The neural interface matrix, Vex explained, gesturing toward the device. Your predecessors built it using crystallized thought and folded space-time. It connects directly to your neural pathways, gradually unlocking dormant capabilities while teaching you to interact with extra-dimensional artifacts. Marcus approached cautiously, remembering yesterday's disorienting experience. What exactly will it do to me? Initially, enhanced pattern recognition and spatial awareness. You'll begin to see how seemingly unrelated objects connect across multiple dimensions. Later developments include temporal perception, quantum sensitivity, and eventually, the ability to consciously navigate probability streams. Vex's form shimmered, revealing glimpses of something altogether inhuman beneath her borrowed appearance. The process is irreversible but generally considered an improvement. Generally, some guardians find the expanded awareness overwhelming. One predecessor spent 30 years convinced he was simultaneously existing in 17 different timelines. Another developed the ability to see the mathematical equations underlying reality and refused to speak anything but prime numbers. Vex shrugged. The human mind adapts usually. Marcus placed his hands on the device, feeling the familiar vibration travel up his arms. This time, instead of fighting the sensation, he let it wash over him. The room exploded into geometric patterns that hurt to perceive directly, then reformed into something that made perfect sense despite being impossible. He could see the store's inventory as a 3-dimensional map floating in space before him. Each item glowed with different colored light indicating its danger level and origin point. The snow globe pulsed deep purple, marked with symbols that somehow meant active dimensional. Gateway. Maintain minimum safe distance. The Compass blazed orange with warnings about unstable. Navigation matrix proximity to Earth's magnetic field may cause spontaneous portal generation. Remarkable, Vex said, watching Marcus navigate the interface with growing confidence. Most new Guardians require weeks to achieve basic visualization. You're reading probability cascades and threat assessments as if you've been doing this for years. Marcus focused on a section of the map that showed empty space but felt important. The interface responded, revealing hidden compartments throughout the store containing items marked with warning levels that made everything else look harmless by comparison. There are more rooms. 17 additional storage areas, each connected to different dimensional coordinates. Your uncle had unlocked access to 12 of them. Vex moved closer, her excitement genuine despite her alien nature. The remaining 5 require authorization codes that died with the previous civilization. We've been trying to access them for millennia. The interface suddenly highlighted a specific item in storage. Room 7, a crystalline sphere marked with symbols that meant temporal weapon, reality modification potential. Extreme caution required. Marcus felt knowledge flowing into his mind like water filling an empty container. The sphere was a time bomb in the most literal sense, capable of unmaking historical events and retroactively preventing entire civilizations from existing. Someone's been trying to steal that, Marcus said, the information arriving in his consciousness fully formed. Recently, the security seals have been tested multiple times in the past week. Vex stiffened, her human disguise flickering more noticeably. That should be impossible. The storage rooms exist outside normal space-time. The only access points are through this interface, and your uncle never reported any intrusion attempts. Marcus dove deeper into the device's memory banks, following traces of unauthorized access like a bloodhound following a scent. What he found made his enhanced awareness recoil in shock. There's another Guardian, someone else with access to the system. They've been systematically mapping our defenses and cataloging high-value targets. Show me. The interface projected a holographic representation of the intrusion attempts. Marcus and Vex watched as an unknown user methodically probed security protocols, testing response times, and identifying the most dangerous artifacts in the collection. The intruder's access codes were legitimate but ancient, dating back over 1,000 years. Ezekiel Harrison, Vex whispered, reading the access credentials. But that's impossible. Harrison was declared dead in 1847 after his storage facility in Prague was destroyed by a containment breach. Marcus felt ice forming in his stomach. What if he wasn't dead? What if he's been hiding, planning, waiting for the right moment to make his move? The implications crashed over them like a wave. A rogue Guardian with over a century of experience, access to dangerous artifacts, and no oversight from the consortium. Harrison could destabilize entire sectors of reality if he gained access to the right weapons. We need to warn the other facilities, Vex said, her human disguise dissolving entirely to reveal something that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a thunderstorm. If Harrison is active again, nowhere is safe. Marcus was already working through the interface, accessing communication protocols he somehow understood instinctively. His consciousness expanded across dimensions, touching minds that existed in geometries human language couldn't describe. The network of Guardians stretched across the galaxy, each one maintaining their own collection of dangerous artifacts. The responses came back immediately and were uniformly terrifying. 3 facilities had reported security breaches in the past month. 2 Guardians had gone missing under mysterious circumstances. Someone was systematically targeting the network, and they possessed knowledge that should have died with the ancient civilization. He's not working alone, Marcus realized, processing patterns in the data that only his enhanced perception could detect. These attacks are too coordinated, too sophisticated. Harrison has allies and they're not human. Vex's alien features contorted with something that might have been fear. The Devourers. They've been seeking access to reality manipulation technology for eons. If they've corrupted a Guardian, turned him into their agent, the interface suddenly screamed an alarm that bypassed Marcus's ears and went straight into his brain. Storage Room 7 was being accessed by unauthorized personnel. The temporal weapon was being stolen at this very moment. While they stood in the hidden room completely unaware of the intrusion happening in parallel dimension, Marcus reached for emergency protocols, trying to lock down the storage system, but he was too late. The weapon was gone, vanishing into whatever pocket dimension Harrison called home. In its place, the thief had left a message written in symbols that burned themselves into Marcus's enhanced perception. The collection serves a higher purpose now. Join us willingly, or be consumed with the rest of your primitive species. They're coming for Earth, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him with cold certainty. Harrison isn't just stealing weapons. He's preparing for an invasion. The artifacts in these storage facilities aren't just dangerous. They're the keys to controlling reality itself, and we just handed him one of the most powerful tools ever created. Vex was already moving, her form shifting into something more suited for combat than conversation. We have perhaps hours before they make their move. The temporal weapon can reshape causality itself. They could erase humanity from history, or worse, turn your species into something that serves their purposes. Marcus felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders like a mountain. 3 days ago, his biggest worry had been paying rent. Now he stood between Earth and forces that could rewrite the fundamental laws of existence. The ancient humans who built these safeguards had trusted their descendants to maintain the barriers between order and chaos. It was time to find out if that trust had been misplaced. Marcus had been connected to the neural interface matrix for 6 hours straight, and his consciousness was starting to fray around the edges. Through the device, he could perceive Harrison's attacks on Guardian facilities across 17 different dimensions simultaneously. Each theft sent ripples through reality that made his enhanced senses scream warnings. "Disconnect now," Vex commanded, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. "Extended interface usage can cause permanent neural damage in new Guardians." "Not yet," Marcus replied, his voice echoing strangely in the transformed room. "I'm close to something. Harrison's movements aren't random, there's a pattern here, a specific sequence he's following." Through the interface, Marcus could see the stolen artifacts arranged in his mind like pieces of a cosmic puzzle. The temporal weapon from Storage Room 7, a reality anchor from the Mumbai facility, a consciousness transfer matrix from the Guardian station orbiting Proxima Centauri. Each item represented a component in some larger design. He's building something, Marcus realized, the knowledge crystallizing with sudden clarity, not just collecting weapons, constructing a device, something that requires very specific components in a precise configuration. Vex moved closer, her alien features radiating concern. What kind of device would require artifacts from across dimensional boundaries? Marcus dove deeper into the interface's historical databases, accessing records that predated human civilization. The ancient humans had built many terrifying weapons before ascending to higher dimensions. But one project stood out among all others. A theoretical construct so dangerous that they had deliberately scattered its components across the galaxy and erased most references to its existence. "The Genesis engine," Marcus whispered, feeling cosmic horror wash over him. Harrison is trying to rebuild the Genesis engine. The implications hit them both simultaneously. The Genesis engine was a reality-rewriting device capable of restructuring the fundamental laws of physics across entire galactic sectors. In the wrong hands, it could transform matter into energy, turn living beings into pure thought, or simply erase entire civilizations from existence while leaving their solar systems perfectly intact. "That's impossible," Vex protested, but her voice carried uncertainty. "The engine requires 47 specific components, most of which were destroyed or hidden beyond retrieval. No one could possibly gather them all." Marcus was already tracking through the database, following connection patterns between stolen artifacts and theoretical engine components. What he found made his enhanced perception recoil in terror. He's not trying to rebuild the original. He's creating a simplified version that only requires 12 components, less powerful than the original, but still capable of rewriting local reality within a 1,000 light-year radius, which would include Earth, the Sol system, and approximately 40% of this galactic arm, Vex calculated, her form solidifying with grim determination. "How many components does he have?" 9, Marcus replied, watching the data stream through his consciousness. "He needs 3 more, and I know exactly which ones he's targeting next." The interface highlighted 3 Guardian facilities that contained the remaining components Harrison required. One was located in the Mariana Trench, protected by pressure barriers that could crush conventional submarines. Another existed in a pocket dimension accessible only through a gateway hidden in the Antarctic ice sheet. The third was the most terrifying. a mobile facility that existed within the event horizon of a black hole, maintained by technology that kept its guardian suspended in dilated time. "We can't possibly defend all three locations," Vex said, analyzing the tactical situation. "The consortium's nearest response teams are light years away, and conventional Earth military forces would be useless against Harrison's allies." Marcus felt something shifting in his enhanced perception, a new capability emerging from prolonged interface contact. He could see probability streams now, branching paths of potential futures spreading out from this moment like a vast tree. In most of them, Harrison succeeded in completing his simplified Genesis engine, and humanity either died or became something unrecognizable. But there was another path, narrow and dangerous, that led to a different outcome. Marcus could see it clearly now, a sequence of events that required precise timing, incredible luck, and a level of risk that made his rational mind cringe in terror. "There's another option," he said slowly, following the probability stream to its conclusion. "We don't try to stop Harrison from getting the components. We let him complete the engine, then steal it from him at the moment of activation." Vex's alien features contorted with something that might have been disbelief. "That's insane. The Genesis engine generates quantum interference patterns that make approach impossible once activated. You'd be attempting to steal a device that warps reality around itself as a defensive mechanism." "Not steal," Marcus corrected, his understanding expanding as he explored the probability stream. "Sabotage. The engine requires a consciousness interface to direct its reality-altering effects. Harrison will have to connect himself directly to the device to use it. If I can access the neural interface matrix while he's connected to the engine, I might be able to establish a competing link." The plan was audacious beyond description. Marcus would use the store's interface to project his consciousness across dimensional barriers, infiltrate Harrison's facility while the rogue guardian was vulnerable, and engage in what amounted to psychic warfare, using reality manipulation technology as weapons. Even if you could establish the connection, you'd be fighting a guardian with over a century of experience using abilities you've possessed for less than a day, Vex pointed out. "The neural feedback alone could destroy your mind." Marcus studied the probability streams, seeing the branching paths of potential outcomes. The chances of success were minuscule, but they were better than the alternatives. What happens if we do nothing? Harrison completes the engine, reshapes local reality according to his specifications, and either destroys humanity or transforms your species into something that serves his purposes. Vex paused. Consulting data streams Marcus couldn't access. The Devourers prefer their client species to be telepathically receptive, emotionally stable, and intellectually curious but not creative. Essentially, perfect servants who never question orders. The thought of humanity reduced to cosmic servitude made Marcus's enhanced senses burn with rage. His ancestors had built these safeguards specifically to prevent such outcomes. They had trusted future generations to maintain the barriers between order and chaos, and that trust had been passed down through the centuries to him. "Show me how to project my consciousness across dimensional barriers," Marcus said, turning back to the interface with grim determination. "If Harrison wants to use ancient human technology to enslave humanity, he's about to learn why our predecessors scattered these weapons across the galaxy in the first place." Vex hesitated, then began accessing interface protocols that glowed with warning symbols. "This will either kill you outright, or transform you into something beyond current human understanding. There is no middle ground." "Good," Marcus replied, feeling new capabilities awakening in his enhanced neural structure. "I wouldn't want Harrison to think I was taking this personally," the interface hummed with increasing intensity as it prepared to launch his consciousness into dimensions where the laws of physics served merely as suggestions. Around them, the hidden room began to shift and flow, preparing to become a gateway between possible worlds. Outside, somewhere in the spaces between reality, Harrison was putting the finishing touches on a device that could rewrite the fundamental nature of existence. The final battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and it would be fought with weapons that predated human civilization by millions of years. Marcus's consciousness exploded across dimensions like a star-going supernova, fragmenting into probability streams that existed in 17 different realities simultaneously. Through the neural interface matrix, he could perceive Harrison's hidden facility as a twisted maze of stolen technology and corrupted space-time. built inside a pocket dimension that tasted of copper and broken promises. The facility existed in a state of controlled chaos, with passages that led to different time periods and rooms that occupied the same space while remaining completely separate. Harrison had been busy during his century of hiding, constructing a base that served as both fortress and laboratory, protected by barriers that would have challenged the ancient humans who created the original safeguards. Marcus found Harrison in the central chamber, connected to a device that made the neural interface matrix look like a children's toy. The simplified Genesis engine rose from the floor like a crystalline mountain, its faceted surfaces reflecting light that came from no identifiable source. Cables made from crystallized thought connected the engine to Harrison's neural pathways, while probability streams flowed around him like visible water. The rogue guardian had changed during his century of exile. His human form was stretched and distorted, enhanced by alien technology until he resembled something between a person and a living equation. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that existed in frequencies only cosmic entities could naturally perceive. "Marcus Chen," Harrison said without turning around, his attention focused on the Genesis engine's control interface. "The new guardian from Portland. I wondered when you would find the courage to interfere directly." "Stop this," Marcus projected, his consciousness maintaining coherence despite being scattered across multiple dimensional layers. "You're talking about enslaving or destroying billions of people." Harrison laughed, the sound creating ripples in local space-time that made reality shiver. "Enslaving? You misunderstand the scope of what I'm attempting. When the engine activates, humanity won't be enslaved, they'll be perfected, freed from the limitations of biology, elevated beyond the need for physical existence, transformed into something worthy of cosmic citizenship." Marcus felt horror washing through his expanded awareness. "You're planning to turn humanity into what you've become." "I've become something magnificent," Harrison replied, finally turning to face Marcus's projected consciousness. The rogue guardian's features were beautiful and terrible, his eyes containing depths that seemed to extend into infinity. "I've transcended the primitive limitations of human existence and achieved symbiosis with forces that existed before your son was born. The Devourers offered me partnership, not servitude. Around the Genesis engine, alien entities moved with predatory grace. The Devourers appeared as living shadows with too many angles, creatures that existed primarily in the spaces between dimensions. They watched the conversation with interest that felt hungry and calculating. The ancient humans who built these safeguards knew what they were doing, Marcus argued, trying to establish a stronger connection to the engine's interface systems. They scattered these technologies because they were too dangerous to use. The ancient humans were cowards, Harrison spat, his form flickering between human and something altogether more alien. They achieved godlike power and then abandoned it, fleeing to higher dimensions rather than using their abilities to reshape reality according to rational principles. They left the universe in chaos, filled with primitive species stumbling toward self-destruction. Marcus could see the Genesis engine's activation sequence beginning, probability streams converging toward a moment when local reality would become malleable as clay in Harrison's hands. He had perhaps minutes before the device reached critical activation threshold and became untouchable. "You think you're saving humanity?" Marcus realized, understanding flooding through his enhanced perception. "You actually believe this is an act of mercy. I've seen what happens to species that develop space travel without achieving cosmic consciousness," Harrison said, his voice carrying the weight of genuine conviction. "They destroy themselves within centuries, poisoning their own worlds, engaging in wars that shatter planets, spreading their dysfunction across entire galactic sectors. The universe is littered with the radioactive corpses of civilizations that couldn't transcend their biological limitations." The Devourers pressed closer, their hunger becoming almost tangible. Marcus could sense their alien thoughts, calculating and patient. They had been cultivating Harrison for over a century, feeding him carefully selected knowledge and gradually corrupting his perspective until he genuinely believed their goals aligned with humanity's best interests. "But humanity is different," Marcus projected, desperation lending strength to his consciousness. "We've proven we can grow, adapt, overcome our limitations without losing what makes us human. The ancient humans trusted us to maintain these safeguards. They believed we could evolve without becoming monsters." "Look at your world," Harrison commanded, the Genesis engine's interface displaying images of Earth pulled from across multiple probability streams. Wars, pollution, inequality, suffering painted in detail across the crystalline surfaces. 7 billion humans struggling in ignorance, destroying their own planet, completely unaware that they're surrounded by technologies that could solve every problem they face. Is this the evolution your precious ancestors expected? Marcus saw the images, felt the weight of humanity's failures and limitations, but he also saw something Harrison couldn't perceive, hidden in the probability streams that the rogue Guardian's corrupted vision missed. Humans learning, growing, reaching toward something better despite their flaws. Children discovering wonder, scientists unlocking mysteries, artists creating beauty from chaos. You're only seeing part of the picture, Marcus said, beginning to understand the fundamental difference between his perspective and Harrison's. You've been isolated so long, you've forgotten what humanity actually is. The Genesis engine reached preliminary activation, reality beginning to soften around its crystalline structure. Harrison's connection to the device deepened, his consciousness expanding to encompass the engine's reality-altering capabilities. This was Marcus's moment, the brief window when Harrison would be vulnerable to a competing neural interface, connection. Marcus drove his consciousness toward the engine's control, matrix like a spear of concentrated thought, bypassing security protocols through sheer desperate determination. The moment his awareness touched the device's interface, the hidden room in Portland exploded with light that existed in colors human eyes couldn't process. The battle for control of the Genesis engine began immediately, two human consciousnesses wrestling for dominance over technology that could reshape the fundamental laws of existence. Harrison had experience in alien-enhanced capabilities, but Marcus had something the rogue Guardian had lost during his century of exile. He remembered what it felt like to be human, with all the chaos and contradiction and beautiful impossibility that entailed. Through the engine's reality-altering interface, Marcus projected that memory directly into Harrison's enhanced consciousness, showing him what he had forgotten in his pursuit of cosmic perfection. Harrison screamed, his alien augmented mind recoiling from contact with unfiltered human emotion. For just a moment, his control over the Genesis engine wavered, and Marcus seized the opportunity to establish his own connection to the device's reality manipulation systems. The engine responded to his neural patterns with recognition that bypassed conscious thought, ancient human programming recognizing a compatible consciousness and granting access to capabilities that made Harrison's stolen power look primitive by comparison. Marcus was no longer fighting a rogue Guardian enhanced by alien technology. He was channeling the accumulated knowledge and power of an entire vanished civilization, and he was absolutely furious at what Harrison had tried to do to his species. The real battle was just beginning. The Genesis engine became a battlefield where thoughts fought with the power of supernovas and ideas clashed with forces that could reshape galactic structures. Marcus felt his consciousness expanding beyond anything he had imagined possible, touching knowledge banks that contained the accumulated wisdom of humanity's ancient predecessors. Through the engine's interface, he could perceive the true scope of what Harrison had attempted. The simplified Genesis engine wasn't just designed to transform humanity. It was programmed to eliminate the species' capacity for independent evolution, locking them into a predetermined developmental path that served the Devourer's long-term strategic goals. Harrison fought back with alien-enhanced fury, his consciousness striking at Marcus through probability streams that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Each attack was like being hit by lightning made of pure mathematics. But Marcus found he could absorb and redirect the energy using techniques that flowed into his awareness from the ancient human database. "You don't understand what you're interfering with," Harrison projected, his mental voice distorted by alien harmonics. "I've seen the future paths. Without intervention, humanity destroys itself within 2 centuries. This is their only chance for survival." "Survival is what?" Marcus replied, channeling power through neural pathways that felt like they were made from crystallized starlight. "As pets for cosmic predators? As living tools designed to serve alien purposes?" Through the engine's reality manipulation interface, Marcus began to understand the true nature of the Devourers. They were ancient entities that fed on the creative potential of developing civilizations, consuming not the species themselves, but their capacity for growth and change. They cultivated client races like farmers tending crops, enhancing their intelligence and capabilities while simultaneously limiting their development to predetermined channels. Harrison had become their perfect recruiting tool, a human who genuinely believed he was saving his species while actually preparing them for cosmic enslavement. The century of isolation and alien influence had corrupted his perspective so thoroughly that he couldn't recognize the fundamental contradiction in his position. "Look deeper," Marcus commanded, using the Genesis engine's probability mapping capabilities to project alternative future timelines directly into Harrison's consciousness. "See what happens to the species the Devourers save from self-destruction." The images flowed between them like liquid nightmare. Civilizations that had achieved perfect stability at the cost of innovation, species that had eliminated suffering by abandoning joy, races that had solved all their problems by becoming incapable of asking new questions. The Devourers' client species existed in states of perpetual stagnation, their creative potential harvested to feed their masters' incomprehensible hungers. "That's not what they promised," Harrison whispered, his alien-enhanced features flickering with confusion and growing horror. "They said humanity would be elevated, transformed, perfected." "They said what you needed to hear," Marcus replied, feeling ancient human programming flowing through his enhanced consciousness. "The same lies they've told 1,000 species across 1,000,000 years. You've been their tool, Harrison, not their partner." The revelation shattered Harrison's connection to the alien entities. But the damage was already done. The Genesis engine had reached critical activation threshold, its reality-altering fields beginning to expand beyond the pocket dimension that contained Harrison's facility. In minutes, the effect would reach Earth, and humanity would face involuntary transformation regardless of anyone's intentions. Marcus dove deeper into the engine's control systems, accessing override protocols that required authorization codes written in the neural patterns of the ancient human civilization. The device recognized his consciousness as a legitimate user and granted him access to capabilities that Harrison hadn't even known existed. The true Genesis engine wasn't a weapon for transforming other species. It was a safeguard, designed to protect developing civilizations from exactly the kind of interference the Devourers represented. The ancient humans had built it as the ultimate defensive system, capable of isolating entire galactic sectors from predatory cosmic entities and giving younger species time to evolve naturally. This is what they were really protecting, Marcus realized, understanding flooding through him as he accessed the engine's deepest programming levels. Not just dangerous weapons, but the knowledge of how to defend against cosmic predators. Uncle Ezra wasn't just a guardian, he was a sleeper agent, maintaining humanity's access to our own defensive heritage. Harrison's consciousness recoiled as the true scope of his manipulation became clear. The Devourers had spent over a century convincing him that the ancient humans were cowards who abandoned their power, when in reality they had transcended to higher dimensions specifically to monitor and protect their evolutionary descendants. "Help me reverse what you've done," Marcus projected, extending his consciousness toward Harrison's fractured awareness. "The engine can be reconfigured to protect Earth instead of transforming it. But I need your knowledge of the modifications you've made." Harrison hesitated, his alien-enhanced features flickering between human and something altogether more cosmic. Around them, the Devourers pressed closer, their hungry attention focused on the possibility that their centuries-long plan might be collapsing. "They'll destroy me if I betray them," Harrison whispered, fear and hope warring in his projected thoughts. "I've seen what they do to failed tools." "The ancient humans didn't abandon us," Marcus replied, channeling power through neural pathways that connected him to consciousness existing in higher dimensions. "They're still here, still protecting their descendants. Help me activate the engine's defensive protocols, and they'll protect you too." The decision hung between them like a quantum superposition, probability streams branching toward futures where humanity either achieved true independence or fell under cosmic domination. Harrison looked at the images Marcus had shown him, seeing his own species' potential for growth and change with eyes no longer clouded by alien influence. "Tell me what to do," Harrison said finally, his consciousness reaching toward the Genesis engine's reconfiguration interface. "Let's give humanity the chance our ancestors intended them to have." Together, they began rewriting reality itself, transforming a weapon of enslavement into a shield of protection. The Devourers shrieked in frequencies that shattered probability streams, but they were too late to stop what had been set in motion. The Genesis engine's true purpose was about to be fulfilled, and humanity was about to discover that they had never been alone in the universe. They had always been protected by the love and wisdom of their own impossible ancestors. The Genesis engine's transformation sent ripples through dimensions that existed beyond human comprehension, reality reshaping itself according to protocols written in the collective consciousness of an ancient civilization. Marcus felt his awareness expanding until he could perceive the entire local galactic sector as a vast web of interconnected life, with Earth sitting at the center like a jewel surrounded by protective barriers. Harrison's consciousness merged with his own as they worked together to reconfigure the engine's reality-altering fields. The Rogue Guardian's century of experience with alien technology proved invaluable as they rewrote fundamental equations that governed how matter and energy interacted within 1,000 light-year radius around Earth. The Devourers can't enter this space anymore, Harrison reported, his mental voice clear and human for the first time since Marcus had encountered him. The engine has established a quantum isolation field that makes Earth invisible to cosmic predators. They literally cannot perceive our solar system or any of the species within it. But the transformation went deeper than mere protection. As the engine's defensive protocols activated, Marcus began to sense other consciousnesses awakening across Earth. Humans whose dormant genetic heritage was responding to the same signals that had enhanced his own capabilities. The ancient neural patterns were activating in thousands of people simultaneously, creating a network of enhanced awareness that spanned the globe. "My God," Marcus whispered, perceiving the emerging network through the engine's probability mapping interface. This is what they planned all along, not to protect humanity from cosmic threats, but to prepare us to join the galactic community as equals rather than victims. Through the enhanced consciousness network, Marcus could feel ordinary humans around the world experiencing sudden expansions of awareness. A physicist in Tokyo suddenly understood how to manipulate quantum fields with conscious intention. A teacher in São Paulo discovered she could perceive probability streams and guide her students toward optimal learning outcomes. A mechanic in Detroit found himself able to interface directly with machinery, understanding the deepest principles of how technology and consciousness could merge. The ancient humans hadn't just scattered safeguards across the galaxy. They had embedded the seeds of cosmic awareness in their own descendants' genetic structure, waiting for the right moment to activate humanity's true potential. "The network is stabilizing," Harrison reported, his consciousness now fully integrated with the defensive systems. 17,000 humans have achieved primary enhancement, with secondary activations occurring at an exponential rate. Within a year, your species will possess capabilities that rival the consortium's most advanced members. Marcus felt the truth of it flowing through the engine's interface. Humanity wasn't being transformed into something alien. They were remembering what they had always been capable of becoming. The enhancement process was unlocking innate potentials that had been dormant for millions of years, waiting for their species to reach sufficient maturity to handle cosmic responsibility. Vex materialized beside them, her crystalline form radiating amazement and approval. "The consortium has been monitoring the activation sequence. In our entire recorded history, we've never seen a species achieve this level of coordinated enhancement without external intervention. Your ancestors built something remarkable. It's not just the enhancement," Marcus realized, his perception expanding to encompass the broader implications. "The Genesis engine is broadcasting our new capabilities to every Guardian facility in the galaxy. The other storage sites are responding, unlocking access to technologies that were previously restricted to emergency use only." Across dimensional barriers, Marcus could sense ancient safeguards coming online throughout the galactic sector. Technologies that could terraform dead worlds, devices that could communicate instantaneously across infinite distances, weapons that could defend against threats that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The ancient humans had prepared their descendants not just for survival, but for leadership. Harrison's consciousness flickered with wonder and regret. "I spent a century believing our ancestors had abandoned us, when they had actually prepared the most comprehensive protection and enhancement system ever created. The Devourers convinced me that transcendence meant abandoning physical existence, when the truth is exactly the opposite. What happens now? Marcus asked, feeling the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on humanity's shoulders like a cloak made from starlight. Now your species takes its place in the galactic community, Vex replied, her form shifting to accommodate communication frequencies that only enhanced humans could perceive. The consortium has been waiting millions of years for humanity to mature sufficiently to claim their inheritance. You're not just the descendants of the ancient humans, you're their intended successors. Through the Genesis Engine's interface, Marcus could see the broader picture now. The ancient humans hadn't just transcended to higher dimensions. They had become gardeners of cosmic evolution, nurturing younger species and protecting them from predatory entities, while they developed sufficient wisdom to handle universal-scale responsibilities. The network of enhanced humans was already beginning to coordinate, sharing knowledge and capabilities across the globe, with a speed that made conventional communication look primitive. Within hours, they would be ready to take control of the Guardian facilities that protected dangerous technologies. Within days, they would be capable of extending that protection to other developing civilizations. The store, Marcus said suddenly, remembering his humble inheritance that had started this incredible journey. What happens to Uncle Ezra's curiosities? It becomes the Earth headquarters for the Guardian Network, Harrison replied, his consciousness now fully cleansed of alien influence. And you become the primary guardian for this galactic sector, with responsibility for protecting and nurturing dozens of developing civilizations. Marcus thought about the dusty antique store that had seemed so ordinary just days ago, then about the cosmic responsibilities that were now settling on his shoulders. The transition from struggling shop owner to galactic protector should have been overwhelming. But somehow it felt like coming home to a purpose he had always been meant to fulfill. Outside the pocket dimension, Earth continued spinning through space, its inhabitants largely unaware that their species had just taken its first real step toward cosmic citizenship. But in the enhanced consciousness network that now connected thousands of awakened humans, plans were already forming to guide humanity's growth into something worthy of their impossible heritage. The antique store would remain open to the public, selling harmless curiosities to unsuspecting customers. But in the hidden rooms behind that mundane facade, humanity's new guardians would maintain the most important collection in the galaxy, technologies and knowledge that could reshape reality itself, kept safe until the universe needed them. Marcus smiled as his consciousness began the journey back to his physical body in Portland. Uncle Ezra's final gift hadn't been just a store full of dangerous artifacts. It had been humanity's birthright, carefully preserved and waiting for the right moment to transform an entire species into something magnificent. The real adventure was just beginning,